questions from what we talked about on Tuesday before we jump into today?
This is the second class, right?
Yeah, this is day 2 of the needs analysis. No questions? Okay, well, let me ask it this way. What did you learn from day 1?
Buyers are not necessarily liars.
Okay, good. Buyers are not necessarily liars. I'm glad, because I'm telling you, you will hear that in our industry a ton, is people saying buyers are liars, buyers are liars. And it's not true. It's just we aren't good communicators, and we got to keep in mind that people tend to communicate one thing, but they actually mean something else. Good. What about Dylan? Anything from you? Oh, it looks like he's reconnecting again, so. Let's see, sorry, I got a text there. All right. Dylan, any thoughts, questions from Tuesday? Maybe you can unmute, I don't know. All right.
Yeah, no, when I join in from my computer, I don't have a microphone, so I'm like.
Oh, so you can't respond, okay,
Yeah.
well, that makes sense. All right, well, just real quick, I'm gonna do a little bit of a reminder of what we talked about, and then we'll continue on with what we're gonna talk about from today. So, just a reminder, like the idea of this needs analysis is, okay, you've met a client, you're now gonna sit down with them and find out really what it is that they are wanting to accomplish and what it is that they want. Now, I don't know if I said this on Tuesday, I don't think I did, but the idea behind us doing this needs analysis is we have to help them uncover what it is that they want, because they have the information. So just, again, reminder, oh, that's not working very well, that marker. Let's see if this one's better. There we go. So just a reminder that 10% of who you are as a personality is conscious, 90% is unconscious. And the people that show up, and specifically a buyer of a house that shows up and says, I don't know how to explain what it is that I want, but I'll know it when I see it. What they're saying is the information is there and they're unconscious. They don't know how to get it up to this conscious level to explain it to you in a way that would make sense. And so the reason that happens is that all of this information is stored in their brain, the pictures in one area, the decisions about it in another area, and then the feelings in another area. And so because of that, so the information's there, it's in the unconscious, but it's stored in these discrete locations. And because it's stored in these discrete locations, what ends up happening is, I just noticed somebody on Zoom dropped off. I'm guessing if she wasn't here for day 1, and I'm guessing when I started saying stuff about day 1 maybe, dropped off, anyway. But so what our job then becomes is we need to help them to get this information reintegrated. And when that happens, when the pictures, the decisions, and the feelings all come back together, what happens is the term that we call crystallization. Crystallization is the moment that happens. That's when they can go, okay, now I understand. Now, I don't think I said this part on Tuesday. No one is going to buy without crystallizing. And I may have said it, I just don't remember. But nobody is going to buy until they crystallize. So our job is to help people crystallize. That's really what our job is as real estate agents, is we need to help people crystallize. And the way that we're going to do that is we have to actually then communicate with them in a way that is going to force them to access the parts of the brain where the pictures, the decisions, and the feelings are stored. Once that happens and then crystallization occurs, now they're empowered to buy. See, so when you have a client, if you run into somebody that you're working with as a client, where what happens is you start to show them properties, and as you're showing them properties, they like it, they keep just seeing them. Now we're not ready to buy, we're not sure, we don't know, we didn't like this, we didn't like that. Really, that's just another way of them telling you they have not crystallized. And until they crystallize, nobody's gonna buy. So they will not buy until they crystallize. So our job then is we have to get them to crystallize. And the way we're gonna do that then is what we started to talk about is we are gonna use, first off, what we talked about is, oops, spelling it wrong here, directives. Directives are just what they sound like. You're directing them to how to communicate. Now, if you remember what we did on Tuesday I had Jaden come up and with Jaden I was doing this pass the baton thing back and forth. And if you remember with him, when he was acting as the agent and I was the client, the pressure was on him to keep coming up with what's the next question. And the reason that happens is because a lot of times the questions that we ask are designed around getting yes/no answers. Meaning, we're saying to people, do you want this or do you want that? Do you want 2 cars or do you want 3-car garage? Well, if I say that to you, in fact, let me do it. So do you want a 2 or a 3-car garage?
Let's do a 2-car.
Okay, do you want a 2 or a 3-car garage?
I'm not sure.
Okay. So, and that's fine, but most of the time, especially when you're dealing with somebody who is new to this, they're going to rely on you're the expert. So a lot of times what will happen is if you say, do you want a 2 or a 3-car garage? They're going to answer the question even if it's not relevant. So now, Lisa, you may have heard me do this before. Dylan, I'm sure you haven't. And I don't know if you're able to unmute, but so I'll just ask Jeremy, well, I'll ask Dylan too, but so if you can unmute, please do and answer this question. If you wanted to know what was going on a mile down the road, would you ask a giraffe or a turtle?
The giraffe.
The giraffe, okay? So have you heard me do this before? Okay, don't answer that. So Dylan, can you unmute? If not, it's fine, but.
Yeah, is that working?
Yeah, perfect. So if you wanted to know what was going on a mile down the road, are you gonna ask a giraffe or a turtle?
A giraffe,
Why?
because he's going to get there a lot faster.
Okay, so Jeremy, why are you gonna ask the giraffe?
I can see a lot farther.
Okay, now, you guys just actually proved my point. When you give people 2 options, they're gonna choose one of them, even if it doesn't actually make sense. Now, not 100%, keep in mind there are exceptions. But for real, if you asked a giraffe or a turtle what was going on a mile down the road, what's gonna happen?
They don't know.
Yeah, they don't know, and they can't, even if they did know, they can't tell you, right? Like in reality.
Yeah.
But notice, when I asked you guys, if you wanted to know what's going on a mile down the road, you're gonna ask a giraffe or a turtle, you gave me an answer even though it makes no sense. If you wanna know what's going on a mile down the road, you don't ask a giraffe or a turtle because they can't talk. They can't tell you, right? See, that's how the brain works. The brain works based on the information given. And so your brain, think of it this way, your brain works like a computer. Given information, it is going to respond based on the information given. And so that's the challenge that we have. Now, so remember, we talked about top 3 complaints. Agents don't return calls. Number 2 is we don't listen. Number 3 is we waste their time. This is where that comes from. We ask them a question that's more important to me than it is to them. And as a result of asking the question, they answer it. But they answer the question, maybe it's not relevant, meaning, if you want to know what's going on a mile down the road, you can ask a giraffe or a turtle. They're going to answer the question, but what if they answered the question based on just the best information they have or the best way they know how, meaning at this conscious level? Well, then what's going to happen is now we're working with faulty information, which we go out then and we get attached to it, the idea that they want to have the home high on the hill with the view of the city lights. We get so attached to the idea of that we now talk about why we would want the home high on a hill with the city lights, which isn't relevant to them, and they then start to figure out, like, this just isn't working. And so they then go find somebody else. Now, the reason for this is what happens, and again, we're still just reviewing, and then we'll get going. We talk about features of a home. See, the client's gonna show up talking to you about features. How, the style of home, how many beds, how many square feet, how big of acreage, all that kind of stuff are features. But keep in mind, and really I would say to some extent, if you don't remember anything else that I teach you guys in this class, remember these 2 things. One is nobody's gonna buy until crystallization occurs. And number 2 is that Features, all that a feature does is provides a benefit. So it's really the benefit that they're looking for in the home. They're looking for the benefit. Now, I mentioned to you guys that we were gonna mostly be talking about buyers to begin with, but I'm gonna introduce a little bit with the sellers now. The same concept happens with a seller. See, the seller isn't looking for, and this took me a while to figure out as an agent. A seller is not looking for the agent who's gonna go put their home on the most websites and I used to always joke about how many home magazines they're gonna put it in. So it doesn't matter how many websites, magazines, flyers, all of that kind of stuff doesn't really matter if their needs and their benefits are being met. Meaning, at the end of the day, if they feel like they can trust you, that you know what you're doing, they don't care about all the marketing. Yet, we as agents, probably in the years that I've been training, the number one thing that I probably get asked from real estate agents is, I need a good listing presentation. Help me to know how to give a good listing presentation. And usually what people mean is something like this. What they mean is, I want a good book that I can flip through the pages and I can show to my client, look at all this stuff that we do. Here's what I'll tell you, they don't care. They don't care about all that kind of stuff. What they care is, do they feel like their needs are being met? So our job with both a buyer and a seller is we gotta figure out what are the needs. Now, so just keep in mind, when somebody shows up and tells you these are the features that I want, this whole idea of buyers are liars comes from, they say the features that they want, but remember, it's not necessarily the feature that they want, it's the benefit it provides. And if there's a way to meet that benefit through another feature, so my example of somebody saying that they want a Rambler, but they end up buying a 2-story or whatever, like if their needs are being met, or actually let me use what I did use, a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights versus the one tucked away in a canyon surrounded by nothing but trees. We look at it and say buyers are liars. The truth is, they were getting their benefit, their need met by the home in the canyon. So they weren't lying, it's just they chose a different feature that met that benefit. Once they know what the benefit is, they're now empowered to buy, meaning once they've crystallized, they're empowered to buy, and they'll do it if they, because it's possible a different feature actually meets it better. That was my story of me saying I want 1 acre. As if you were my agent, I would have been hell-bent on, you gotta find me an acre, yet I can promise you I would not have bought a single house that had an acre.
Or like, do you really need a pool downstairs if you have
Or-
one just right across
Yeah,
the
thank you, or
street?
the pool downstairs. See, because yeah, the 1 acre was about recreation, and I got it from the park next door, and the same thing, the pool was about convenience. And here's the funny thing, I didn't tell you guys on Tuesday. So I've lived in my house over 20 years now. Do you know how many times I've gone over and swam laps in that pool in 20 years?
Hardly.
Yeah, maybe 5 times in 20 years have I gone over and swam laps. But here's the key. Also around my neighborhood is a 2-mile trail that I run on that trail nearly every single day, and it's about the convenience. My only complaint I have about it right now is it's a 2-mile trail and I wish it was 3. Like, that's my only complaint, but it's about the convenience. I love the convenience of it. The fact of the pool next door, it was about the convenience. I can promise you if I didn't have one, I probably would still think, well, I want to have a pool in my basement because if I want to go swim, which,
Be there.
yeah, it's there if I want it. It was all about the convenience. So just kind of keep that in mind is when people tell you the features they want, if you can distill it down to the benefit or the need that they really have that they're trying to fulfill, it is 100% they won't buy the house if it doesn't meet those 2 or 3. So that let's talk about that again. So remember, there's 2 to 3 of these benefits. Now there's 15, and I'm going to give those to you today. But there's 15 benefit words, and ultimately when they tell you the features, they're really looking for the benefit. Okay?
So if they tell you they really want the pool, but then you can ask them, well, why do you really want the pool?
Yeah, so the only thing, yes, the answer is yes, but you don't wanna ask, why do you want the pool too soon? If you ask too soon, it will be like what I did with you on Tuesday, when I said, well, why do you want that? And you were like, I don't know, just do. See, if somebody says, I don't know, I just do, they haven't crystallized yet. But if they can tell you it's because of the convenience, or if they can tell you it's for their health. So I'll kind of list some of these other ones for you here. Health. It's for their health, or they were to tell you that it's for, I'm trying to think of what other, they may want the pool for entertainment. So that may be the reason. But so ultimately when they're talking about it, and they don't have to actually say the word, by the way, they don't have to say the exact word, but like on convenience, if you were to ask them, well, why do you want, what is it about having a pool in your basement? And they said, well, it would just make my life so much easier. Well, that they're talking about convenience. So as long as they're talking around the word, you're good. Now, what we have to be careful on this whole process, though, is we start to assume why we would want it and what the benefit would be. Or what happens is they talk about it, and then from the talking about it leads to us assuming we know what the benefit is. We need them to tell us what that benefit is or talk around it without us projecting it onto them or us convincing them that's what it is. Does that make sense? Good. All right. Any other questions before we get into the next piece of this? Okay. So the next piece of this. So the first way we're going to do this, and actually I'm going to introduce you to a piece that's actually before even this directive. Something that we want to do to begin with is permission. Now, so let me explain that. So when I first learned this process, I flew to the Bay Area and was being trained in this. And I was so excited about it. Like when I came home, I sat down with my wife and I was like, oh my gosh, you gotta see how awesome this is, this tool that I just went and learned. I gotta show you how cool it is. So I sat down and I said to my wife, okay, describe for me your perfect home. Now remember, I say now ideal home, but back then, when I was learning this, we said perfect home. So I came back and I said to my wife, describe for me your perfect home. And she started to talk about it and I was like, okay, cool, what else? Okay, wow, that's great, what else? And actually, I'm not sure I was giving the positive feedback as I think about it now, but I was like, okay, what else? Okay, what else? What else? And as we were talking through it, all of a sudden my wife was like, this is weird. If somebody did that to me, I would be like, this is weird. Now, I panicked because I had just spent 3 full days learning this and learning how to train it. And I was so excited about it. And all of a sudden now my wife's like, yeah, that wouldn't work for me. And I was like, oh crap. So I called up the guy that trained me in it. And I was like, okay, I got a problem. Like, I was so excited about this and I came home and I started to do this and my wife told me it was weird. And he said, well, did you ask her for permission? And I was like, it's my wife. I don't have to ask for permission. And he's like, yes, you do. So let's talk about that. So the first thing that we want to do when we're going to take somebody through this process is we got to start with asking for permission. And I'll share with you what that sounds like. Needs to be something along the lines of this. So Jeremy, thanks for coming and meeting with me. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come and sit down, and I promise I'm going to give you some really good information. But before we get started, in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I'm going to need to ask you some questions that may be things you haven't considered before. Some of them might even feel a little uncomfortable. Is that going to be okay?
All right, yes.
Okay, perfect. So part of what we want to do, you want to make sure you're just saying, look, and the key pieces of this is in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you. Sometimes I hear agents say, in order for me to determine if I can work with you. Well, which sounds better to you? In order for me to determine if I can work with you, or in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I'm going to need to ask you some questions. Yeah.
The second one's
way better to be like, in order for and by the way, this is an us decision. It's not just about me. So in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you some questions that may feel personal, maybe things you haven't considered, might even make you a little uncomfortable. Like a lot of times agents don't want to say the uncomfortable part. So that's fine, if you don't feel comfortable saying some of the questions might make you uncomfortable, then, but you at least have to say, I need to ask you some questions that maybe things you haven't considered. Is that gonna be okay?
That sounds better.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine, you can say it either way, but the idea is I gotta get permission because what you're gonna see as we go through this, it is kind of a nosy questions and it can be, if you don't do it right, could be perceived as like, this is weird. So the key things with that though is this, is we wanna do these directives and we need to start with, and I always start with describe for me. And then these are just reminders here, share with me, help me understand,
I don't like share with me.
okay, don't use it.
I think it's been buried.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you don't have to use all of these.
Am I the only one?
I haven't even really used any of them yet, I'm brand new.
Yeah, so you don't have to use all of these, so if you don't like one, don't use it. And then the last is tell me about. Okay, those are the directives. And now keep in mind with the directives, we are then gonna also be using prompters. And those prompters are going to be, what else? Keep going. Say more, stuff like that, okay? Now, the key thing where I'm saying to this, that if you're not doing it right, it could create this, it's kind of weird, is you wanna make sure you're using, I'm just gonna abbreviate it, positive feedback. So every time they're telling you stuff, now you don't have to say it after every single thing, but just keep in mind, that's why I liked using that passing the baton back and forth, is every time they pass the baton back to me, and again, you're not gonna actually really do that. I always worry when I say that some agent's gonna be like, okay, to my client, all right, the only person who can talk is the one who's holding this, so like, don't do that, right?
Talking
But
stick.
when they figuratively pass the baton back to you, so just figuratively when they do it, pass the baton back, make sure you're giving them positive feedback. The positive feedback is gonna be like, hey, you're doing great. Wow, I'm getting a really good picture. Wow, this is so exciting. This is so interesting. Wow, this is so helpful. Like the more you can do of positive feedback that way, oh, Lisa, you're doing a great job. This is gonna help so much in shortening our time frame. Or this is so great. In fact, this is gonna enable me to find the perfect house for you, or the ideal home, you can say. But make sure you're giving that positive feedback, then you're gonna say, so I probably really should reorder this and say positive feedback first, then the what else, or keep going. So I'm gonna say, hey, you're doing a really good job, Jeremy. What else? And then you are figuratively handing them back the baton now, and then just be quiet, don't say a word. Go ahead.
So you role played this with your wife when you got home from learning how to teach this.
Uh-huh.
So did she describe your home?
I don't remember now, actually.
So,
Well, actually, let me back up. When this happened this happened before I actually bought the home I'm in, that experience. So I don't remember for sure, to be honest. But we did move within a year. Which that's the one thing to keep in mind.
Come home with this.
Once you take somebody through this process, there's a pretty good chance, once they crystallize, they're ready. So we did move within a year.
So you're getting information, you're gleaning more and more information, so you are dialing in what you're looking for,
Correct.
and you're prompting.
Yep.
To get more, helping them focus in on their, whatever you wanna call it, their benefits.
Well, to begin with, you're helping them get the features. I'm just gathering the features first. So, and now, along the way, they may, if they have crystallized, they may say, hey, where I live right now it's really difficult to blah, 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 and therefore, if I had this blah, 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 it would make things so much more convenient. So like they might, if that would just tell me they've already crystallized, if they said that, if they land on, the reason I want to do this is because it's gonna make my life so much easier, they've crystallized. But if they're just saying, if they're saying it more of like, it's just so difficult and this and that, like, I mean, they may have crystallized there, but,
Well, when we were talking about the garages and you said, do you want a 2 or 3?
right.
I would just keep talking, cause I only have one car. I have a 3-car garage. It's come in handy, cause then my son sold his cabin, and guess where all his cabin stuff is?
So that could come in handy, or that could be a problem, because what would have you done if you only had a 1-car garage? You wouldn't have to store it.
He keeps saying, how do you stand someone else's junk in your garage? But it really doesn't bother me, it's just stacked up, stored in my third
sure.
car. It doesn't really, I'm glad I can help, as
Yeah.
long as I have my
Yep,
my
gotcha.
little sliver of my
So-
own garage.
Yes, so just kind of keep in mind that we're starting by just, and I'm gonna keep pointing you back to this. The first thing that I'm doing by saying, describe for me your ideal home, is I'm instructing them or directing them to access the part of the brain where the pictures and the decisions are. Like, and typically it's more pictures, but it could be decisions that come into as well. That's the idea. So remember, this is tool number 1, which is designed around accessing the pictures part of it, okay? So what we're gonna do, and I'll give this to you in a little bit, but I have for you this grid here. That what we're gonna do then is, after we say describe for me your ideal home, we're gonna keep notes based on what they said. And we're gonna fill the grid based on what they talk about. So think of it as each one of those boxes of the grid, so I'll just draw it up here real quick. Every one of those boxes of the grid is gonna represent a feature. So every time they talk about anything they say about the kitchen, for example, I'm gonna just write in that box right there. Anything they talk about the kitchen's going in there. If they talk about backyard, that's gonna go in there. If they talk about family room, that's gonna go here. So now the other thing you'll notice, I just abbreviated backyard as BY. Here's what you need to know. This grid is for you. So as long as it makes sense to you, fill it out however you want. Meaning, if you wanna go fill out the boxes like this, do that. If you wanna go this way, do that. If you wanna abbreviate stuff, kitchen is kit, backyard's BY, family room's fam for me. Like, I just have identified as they talk, I just will abbreviate it because it only matters that I understand what this is saying. It's not like I'm gonna give it to them. I have seen agents do that where they're like, okay, here's everything, take a look at it, and like, I personally wouldn't do it because my handwriting's bad, they wouldn't be able to read it anyway. But this is for you, okay? So, we start with permission. In order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you some questions, maybe things you haven't considered, maybe even make you a little bit uncomfortable, possibly. Is that gonna be okay? Yes, that'll be, like, a lot of times agents worry of if you say it might make you uncomfortable, you worry that the client's gonna be like, well, no, I don't want you to make me uncomfortable.
It's better to give
But-
them a heads up than to just throw them into uncomfort.
And I've never had anybody say that. In like role playing, practicing with agents, I've had people say it, but an actual client sitting down and saying that, they're usually like, okay. But if they did, if for some reason somebody did, well, what would you mean about that would make me uncomfortable? I would just say, look, we're talking about the home you live in. And so like, there may be things you need to tell me about that house that you might not typically share with people. And I just want you to know I'm okay with it. So are you okay with it if we get to that? And I don't know that we will. Like, truly, very rarely are you gonna get to something that makes them uncomfortable. But getting the permission, once they've given you permission, they're not gonna say to you, this is weird. Why are you asking me this? Well, because you already told them. And if they did ever say that to me, this is weird, why are you asking me this? I would say, I'm trying to save you time in finding you the ideal home. And the best way to do that is for me to gather all this information. So, anyway, all right. So we good on the directives piece. So now, let me say this about it. What I'm gonna do when I'm filling this out, so, and remember, describe for me your ideal home. I'm gonna do what else, keep going, say more, and vary those. Don't just say the same one all the time, just, hey, oh, tell me more, keep going, what else? Yeah, oh, this is exciting, tell me more. Like, you're gonna do that with these prompters. Now, what I'm gonna do then, and how long do I do that? Let me see if you guys remember from Tuesday. When do I stop saying, what else, keep going, tell me more?
When they've already told you everything they can and say, I don't know.
Yeah,
What
perfect.
else?
Yeah, we're looking for them to say, I don't know what else to tell you, that's about it. Oh man, if you found that, that would be perfect. Like, you're looking for them to give you an indication. Now, it is possible that part of the indication is you're just reading their body language, that they're like, oh.
Just trying to look really confused.
Yeah, kind of, which is when they would start to be like, this is weird. If you're trying to push after they've already tapped out, you're gonna get this is weird. But as long as so pay attention to the body language, because if you see the body language going, geez, I mean, I guess maybe that might give you an indication that they're pretty much done. But I'm gonna do that until they say some type of that's about it, I can't think of anything else, I don't know what else to tell you. Once they do that, I'm gonna stop now and I wanna look at my grid. And what I'm looking for on the grid is, if, let's say for example, so we don't have Carrie here today, but kitchen was important to her. So if, for example, when she talked about the kitchen, she probably would have told me a lot about the kitchen, because it's important to her.
2 squares for that.
But yeah, and you could do that too. If you fill out this square, then go down to this one and continue with the kitchen. But keep in mind though that not just because somebody gives you a ton of information about a feature doesn't automatically mean it's one of their top 2 or 3. And so just because they didn't give you a whole lot of information doesn't mean it's not one of the top 2 or 3. So kind of remember, and I said this on Tuesday, we want to stay in this Einsteinian state of amazement. Like, I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be amazing, whatever it is. Like, the more you can stay in, don't put your assumptions into things, the more you can stay in this just like, hey, I don't really know where this is going to end up, but it's going to be awesome when we get there. Like, the more you can do that, the better this is going to work for you. But because the more that you go, oh, I get it, yeah, it's about convenience. If it is, great. But if it's not, you're going to create a problem to where they go, I don't know what they were talking. Like, they're going to go right back to you didn't listen and you're wasting their time. Okay? So stay in that state of Einsteinian amazement. So now, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to look at this and anything that they haven't given me a whole lot of information. Now, remember, I think I told you this on Tuesday. I'm going to keep coming back to this. What is the purpose that we're doing this?
We're in real estate, Russ?
But why are we sitting down with the client and doing this? See,
Good information.
it's, yes, we're gonna get, yes, good, there we go. We're gonna get a lot of good information, but it's not about the information, it's what?
Crystallization.
It's to cause them to crystallize. So now, here's what I will tell you. Of all the trainings I trained, this one has the shortest shelf life. Meaning if you don't start using this, and just use it in your daily life too. Be curious, basically is what I'm saying. But if you don't use this skill, you'll lose it. Because if you forget that we're gonna get a lot of good information that's helpful and we're gonna use it, but that's not why we're doing it. We're doing it to cause crystallization, because they're not gonna buy until they do.
Oh,
Question?
no,
Oh, okay.
discussion, you're good, sorry.
Yeah, this is like an auction. You flinch, you bought it. Okay. So what I'm gonna do then is I'm just gonna look at this grid to see, okay, do I have a bunch of information? So let's just say that the kitchen, I had all this information. And let's also say we had, what's another feature of the house? The
garage.
Okay, yeah, garage. Why am I forgetting that?
Sometimes it's just a matter of,
Yeah, that was an important one.
it's a matter of getting him to think.
Yes.
Like, oh,
That-
yeah.
And in order to do that, we have to use these directives. Hey, describe for me. See, like I told you guys before, a lot of times you're gonna say, describe for me your ideal home. They think you wanna talk at this level, so they're typically gonna respond, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage. Okay, great, but what else? Oh, and even though they may not say this, they might, but they typically aren't gonna say, oh, you really wanna know more. They're gonna go, oh, okay. And then if you watch, and everybody does it different, but if you watch their eyes, you're gonna see them either looking up, looking down, like they're gonna all of a sudden, when you're accessing different parts of the brain, their eyes are gonna respond a certain way. So, and this is a little more advanced for what we're gonna talk about today, but when they do crystallize, or right before they crystallize, most people, if you watch their eyes, you'll know they crystallize. Like, you'll see their eyes flutter. And everybody does it different. I want to make sure you understand that, which is part of why I say it's more advanced. If it was just you're watching for their eyes to flutter, then you go, oh, okay, they crystallized, then I would implement that. But there's more to it than that. But when someone crystallizes, for them, they will do it the same way every time. And if it is that their eyes flutter, or it might be that their eyes look up, their eyes might look, they might look off to the side. Like everybody's going to have a little bit different
Spiritual
way.
experience.
Well, it can actually be that. So when they crystallize, though, if you will know because they'll actually attach to it. And I'll say more about that in a bit. But okay, so back to this. Let's say that they told me a ton about the garage and the kitchen. Okay. So I look over at this stuff, and then it could be that I have all of these boxes filled. But I'm going to look at it and go, okay. They told me a lot about the kitchen. They told me a lot about the garage. I haven't heard a whole lot about the backyard or the family room. So before I leave these directives, I might go back and say, hey, so Jeremy, you mentioned the backyard. Tell me more about the backyard. And you're like, I'm coughing right now. And
Just want a big backyard, that's about it.
okay, so if that's what he said, if he goes, I just want a big backyard and that's about it, that's all I'm going to get from that. So I'm not going to push any further. But if I said, hey, so you mentioned the backyard, tell me more about the backyard, and he starts to tell me, well, I need room for a garden, and I want to have a spot, a ton of grass, and I need a spot for the dog, and I want a shed, and I blah, 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 then I just keep writing down. So I'm just checking in to make sure, because again, the purpose of us doing this is to cause crystallization, and in order for crystallization to occur, I got to get them to access the parts of the brain that all this information is stored in. So I'm gonna, hey, so tell me more about the backyard. Hopefully they tell me more, but if they don't, if he just goes, just need a big backyard, that's it, great. Now, the other thing you mentioned was the family room. Tell me more about the family room.
I want a fireplace in there.
Okay, so then I'm gonna write down fireplace. Oh, fireplace.
Start thinking about it.
Yeah, so I go fireplace. Oh, that's great, what else?
I think that's about it.
Okay.
Anything else?
Okay, good. So notice the same kind of a thing. So think of it this way. When I first started this, it was just like this 30,000 foot view. Like just, and don't ever say that to them, but it's like, I'm just getting the big picture. Now I'm gonna look at it and go, okay, he didn't give me a lot about this. And it's for one of two reasons. Either he got distracted and there is more information, or there's just not more information, and that's why I'm just gonna double check. Anywhere that I don't have a whole lot written down, I'm gonna go back to and say, hey, so you mentioned the backyard, tell me more about that. And if he says that's about it, okay, great. You mentioned the family room, tell me that. Fireplace, I forgot about that. Okay, fireplace, sure, what else? That's probably it. Okay, great. Now that I've done that, I'm ready to move on to tool number 2. So tool number 2, but actually we're gonna take a pit stop before we actually hit tool number 2. So tool number 2 is designed around accessing this part of the brain, the decisions part, okay? So, but before I do that, I first am gonna come back to this and say, remember, I'm trying to get to the 2 or 3 the most important items, the 2 or 3 key needs. Because people are gonna buy, if they have 3 key needs and the house has 2, they're not buying. If they have 3 key needs and the house meets 1 of them, they're not buying. You gotta get those 2 or 3. So what I'm gonna do then, as I move from the directives over here, I wanna now rank the features that they've talked about. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say, okay, Jeremy, hey, I've got a really good picture. So I'm gonna start with this positive feedback. I got a really good picture and you've shared some really good information. I mean, this is gonna be really, really helpful. You have no idea how excited I am about helping you find this house. Now, keep in mind the other thing, all of this stuff that they've just talked about, they're gonna be really excited about it. Like inside, even if they don't say it, inside they're like, oh, that'd be so awesome if I found that. So I'm gonna now amp it up basically. Hey, I'm so excited, it's gonna be so fun to go out and find you this property. But let me ask you this, of everything we've talked about, what are the 2 or 3 things that are the most important? So the script for this ranking is, what are the 2 or 3? Now, why am I not saying what are the 3 most important? Why am I saying it as, give me the 2 or 3, versus what are the 3?
Can you have 3 most important things?
Yeah.
Less pressure.
So good, less pressure, I like the idea of that. Here's the thing, if I say give me the 3 most important things, how many are they gonna give me?
3.
3. If I say give me the 2 or 3, how many are they gonna give me?
2 or 3, whatever's the most important.
2 or 3, whatever's most important. What if there's 4 important and I say give me the 2 or 3 most important?
They'll probably give you 4 then.
Then I'm gonna get 4, because what they're gonna do is when I say 2 or 3, they're gonna go, oh, the kitchen and the family room. And then if there was 4, they'll be like, and oh shoot, I don't know. I mean, both the backyard and the garage are really important. Like I don't know if I can. I mean, I kind of have both of those. Then what they're now telling me is great. There's 4, but if I say 2 or 3, if there's only 2, they'll give me 2. See, if you say give me 3, they'll give you 3, and then you'll focus on the 1. Not necessarily, but you might focus on the 1. That really isn't the most important of the 3 because it's important to you. Remember the let them buy the house they want, not the one you think they should have? You might focus on the one you like the best, and they're again gonna be like, why do they keep talking about the kitchen? I really care about the family room and the garage, but they're so caught up in this kitchen. Does that make sense? That's why I'm staying as neutral as I can. You'll notice as we go in on this, I'm going from, hey, give me anything, to I'm slowly gonna fine tune and bring it in. But to begin with, hey, give me the 2 or 3, because I don't know how many there's gonna be. I don't know if there's gonna be 2, 3, or 4. So give me the 2 or 3 most important. They now give me then the 2 or 3. When they give those to me then, I'm now gonna say, okay, the garage and the backyard. Let's say that's what they did, okay? So I'm gonna now circle that and say, okay, garage and backyard. Now with that in mind, what's gonna happen now for me, the rest of the stuff in the grid, we're not gonna talk about. We're only gonna talk about the 2 or 3 that are most important. Now, the only caveat to that is, if they bring something else up from here, if they bring it up, we'll talk about it. But I'm not bringing up those things anymore. I'm only gonna talk about the 2 or 3. Does that make sense? Because that's all I care about is, hey, now that they've given me everything, what are the 2 or 3 that are most important? In essence, I'm saying to them, what are the ones you couldn't live without? What are the ones you won't buy the house? Now, I don't ever say it that way, but what are the ones you wouldn't buy the house without? Because to begin with, if you said that right then, what are the ones you couldn't live without? They're gonna say, I want all of it. Well, they probably can't have all of it.
That's a lot of conversation.
Yeah, and that's a lot of conversation too. But I'm gonna just, hey, so what are the 2 or 3 that are most important? They're gonna tell me, then I'm gonna say, okay, great. So the next piece of this, so tool number 2 right here, is now gonna be what we call modifiers. Okay? The modifiers are who, what, when, where, how. Questions. Now, you may have noticed I left one out.
Who, what, when, where.
Who, what, when, where, how. What did I leave? Typically when somebody says the list, what do they usually say?
Why?
Why? Yeah, good. So you'll notice I left out the why. And that is intentional. So we don't, during the modifier questions, we don't want to ask, why do you want that? And the reason is because the why is how we're going to use on tool number 3. So first we need to find out now remember, so the reason we leave tool why out is that's part of tool number 3. Tool number 2 is to get the decisions. What are the decisions? Not why they've made the decisions, just what are the decisions they've made. Does that make sense?
Well, why could change everything.
And yeah, why, the thing is, why is a very powerful question. It's just, you have to make sure when you use the why, it's at the right time. Otherwise, it could be a little bit offensive. Well, why do you want that? Like, they might interpret it that you're judging them. So we don't use why, we use who, what, when, where, how questions. Now, here's the other thing that I have found with this, is typically, you're gonna need to ask between 5 and 7. Now, there's not really an exact number on this, but the reason I say you need to ask 5 to 7 questions of any combination of these. So it's any combination of these, but you need to ask somewhere typically between 5 and 7. for each of these that they selected, the 2 or 3 key needs that they brought up. So once they've identified the 2 or 3 key needs that they've brought up, then what you're gonna do is, so let's just take the backyard, okay? So now I'm gonna take the backyard and I'm gonna ask 5 to 7 modifier questions. This is what that's gonna look like. So typically, like I've got this box here that's the backyard, okay? And let's say I've got all this information in here, which is great. But what I'm gonna do then is I'm gonna say, okay, so Jeremy, I'm gonna start actually, think of it this way. So tool number 1 is a directive, right? So I'm gonna start with a, oops, let me do it differently here. I don't wanna get the marker all over my hands. I was about to, but, okay. So I'm gonna start though with a directive, okay? So I'm gonna start with a directive. So what I'm gonna do then is I'm gonna say, okay, Jeremy, so picture yourself in the backyard. So notice when I say picture yourself, I'm giving like a command, and this is back to, I'm forcing them in their brain to picture. So picture yourself standing in the backyard. Tell me what you see. Now, keep in mind, as I ask you this, maybe backyard isn't important to you, but that's fine, just make stuff up, okay? So I'm gonna say, so Jeremy, picture yourself in the backyard, tell me what you see.
Want to have a little barbecue area somewhere, maybe a garden or a greenhouse.
Okay, good. So now as he's saying this, I'm gonna keep writing more notes on my paper here, okay? Okay, sure.
Maybe a place to build a shed and
Oh, yeah.
that's about all I want. Maybe an area, just a place to be able to entertain guests.
Okay, cool.
Storage area.
So storage and a place for your entertainment, okay, perfect. What else?
That would be it for me for the backyard.
That's about it. Okay, now, so I started with a directive. Now I'm gonna come over here and use modifiers. So typically what you wanna do is listen to what they said. When I said, picture yourself in the backyard, tell me what you see. Listen to what they're saying and then think about what questions would be relevant to ask that are who, what, when, where, how questions. So for example, he may say what you just said, and then I'm gonna go, okay, perfect, so who all is gonna be using the backyard then? So now you'll notice I'm going from being wide open to I'm now gonna start to ask some yes, no, shorter answer questions. So who's gonna be using the backyard?
Primarily just family, maybe guests when they come over.
So family and guests, okay, so now I'm gonna go, so how often do you have family or guests over?
Probably just once a month.
Oh, about once a month, okay, so what kinds of things are you doing when you have them?
Barbecues.
Oh, barbecue, okay, but so are you just out for the barbecue, or like what other things are you using in the backyard?
Primarily just barbecue, gathering area.
Okay, so just that's where you're gonna hang out and just chit chat and stuff. Okay, cool, perfect. So the other thing that you mentioned was the shed. So where would the shed be in relation? And in fact, let me pause. I might have even wanted to say on that, so for that barbecue area, where in the backyard do you picture that being?
It's close to the kitchen.
Okay, so close to, yeah, it makes
So we
sense.
have access.
And then that's when you'd want to, pause, hey, yeah, that makes sense, yeah, if I were you, I'd do that too, that's great. So the other thing you mentioned is the shed, so where, give me, I guess, what's the layout of the backyard gonna look like?
I would ideally want the shed in one of the back corners, so that way it's out of the way, but easy to access.
Okay, so shed in the corner out of the way, easy to access, okay, so how big does that shed need to be?
10 by 12.
10 by 12, okay, and what kinds of stuff do you have that you're keeping in there?
Kayaks, camping equipment.
Okay, now let me pause for a minute, and part of why I'm asking these questions is twofold. So this is two parts to this. I'm asking these questions, one, to force him to think, what are the decisions you've made about this? The second part of it is for me to figure out, because remember back to, again, actually I don't think I did say this on Tuesday. Sometimes somebody may show up and say, I want a 3-car garage, and then they go buy a house with a 2-car garage but a shed in the backyard, and agents would say, well, buyers are liars. They said they wanted a 3-car garage and they bought a 2-car garage. Well, what did they want to use that garage for? And if part of it was storing all the tools for yard work and stuff, maybe a shed works better because now it's separate, secluded, out of the way of being in the garage. So hopefully you're understanding where I'm going with this. So it's a twofold of me asking these questions, is you're asking the questions to help them crystallize, but I'm also asking it so that I can know does it have to be this exact feature? Does he have to exactly have
I
a
can't find
shed?
anything with a 3-car garage, but I found one with 1 or 2-car garage, but a big shed out back.
Yeah, exactly.
I took you to see that house.
Yeah, so, cause then, yeah, exactly right. Then I can know, hey, they don't need a 3-car garage because part of what they're storing is, and so I might ask him during this, what would your thoughts be? So this would be another one of the modifiers, anything that starts with one of these questions. So what would your thought, let's say that he said he wanted a 3-car garage and that I was asking him, well, what are you gonna be putting in the garage? And he says kayaks and blah, blah, blah. So what would your thoughts be if it only had a 2-car garage, but there was a big shed that you could put all that stuff in?
That'd be perfect.
And if they go, that'd be perfect, now all of a sudden, now I know, we're not limited to a 3-car garage, we can actually go to a 2.
And
See-
now I feel like you're listening too.
And if, yes, thank you, that's awesome. Okay, so does this make sense? And you're, ideally, I'm just gonna be saying, so, that's why I start with this directive. Picture yourself in the backyard, tell me what you see. Then based on what he tells me that he sees, I just start asking, well, who's gonna use it? How often do you use it? What kind of things do you do? One of the things I didn't ask, how many people come over when you're having the family over?
Yeah, do you need a much bigger yard or
Yeah.
smaller yard gonna work?
So I wouldn't wanna ask it that way. I wouldn't wanna say, do you need a bigger or a smaller? Because here's part of why.
How many people are you trying to entertain though? We'll tell you about the size.
Exactly. So by me saying, so how many people are you typically having over? Oh, okay, well then that gives me an idea of what we're looking at that. And like I say, what kinds of things are you doing? Maybe he says, oh, well, yeah, we're gonna have the barbecue, but then we're gonna have cornhole set up, and I wanna have a volleyball set up, and like all this is giving me the information to figure out. But now keep in mind, because a lot of times agents will get caught up in this of, well, what if they end up describing something they can't afford? Have either of you had that thought yet?
Yeah, I imagine they would.
So here's the thing to keep in mind. So back to this. Features have a price tag. Oops, did that wrong. Benefits don't. Features have a price tag associated with them. A pool in the basement, price tag. Convenience, there's no price tag associated with it. And here's the other thing. If somebody said they wanted the pool in the basement, but it's really about convenience, well, you might say to them, well, what if I found you a condo that has a pool? Because maybe they can't afford a house at all. But if convenience is what they're looking for, that's what they're looking for. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be associated with a price tag. Because it may be, well, what if you bought a condo and it had that? Or a mobile home that has in the park there's a pool? Or what if you bought a house that across the street is the community pool? Oh, well, yeah, that would be great. See, it's convenience they're looking for, not the feature. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so we're gonna ask questions as 5 to 7. Now, keep in mind, even though I said 5 to 7, this is more of a minimum. Like, you might ask 10, 12, 15. Like, if they've given you a ton of information and you're like, well, who's gonna use it? And how often and when and where's it gonna be located? What direction should this be and how would that be and what would that look like? Like, you're getting them to build the picture, because the more they build that, the easier it's gonna be to get them to crystallize, okay? All right, so once I've done that, and I've asked all those questions, now keep in mind, I'm doing that just for the first of the 2. So once I get to this spot, I'm gonna stick with this feature until I land on the benefit or the need. And then I'll go up to the garage. So I'm not confusing them. I'm sticking with the backyard until
Figure out the need for that.
I figure out what the need is for that. And if I've asked 5 to 7 of these, they should be a minimum of 5 to 7. Once I've asked a number of these, they should have now accessed enough parts of the brain where the pictures are stored and the decisions are stored to where I can now move down to tool number 3. Tool number 3 is designed around this, the feelings part of the brain. Now, I like to call this the tag, okay? And the tag, where that comes from is, I worked at a grocery store when I was between when I was 12 and 14, and almost 15, I worked at a grocery store. And actually, total side note, but it was funny because back when I was 12, this is one of those things where I feel old as I tell you to you now, but at 12 years old, I cleaned the meat department. So the butcher would work all day cutting up all the meat. And then at 12 years old, I would go in at night and I would clean all the bandsaw, all of the grinder. Yeah, you look at that now and you're like, you could never get away with having a 12-year-old go and clean all that stuff.
Lucky to have your dick.
I know. Well, funny you say that. One of the little tricks that I learned while I worked at the grocery store is when I was cleaning the grinder, I would get some of the hamburger, and maybe I was just young and people humored me, but I would get some of the hamburger and I would put it on my finger, and then I would get a knife and I would cut a little bit of a slit in the hamburger that was on my finger, and then I would get some ketchup and put it on there, and then I would go find one of the workers and be like, do you think I need stitches from this? And like I say, I was 12. They may have been like, he's an idiot, but they played along and were like, oh my gosh, are you okay? But anyway, I don't know. So here was my point of saying that, not about the butcher. But after I was, for whatever reason, that's what is ironic. The guy that owned the grocery store lived across the street from me. He would let me go clean and work with all these big machines, but he wouldn't let me stock the shelves. You couldn't do that till you were 14. I don't know why. I guess maybe you wouldn't face the can the right way. I don't know. But here's where I got the idea of this tag. It was back then, the way we put price tags on was we had these price guns that you would pull the trigger and put the tag on the stuff. So that's what I think about this is. Tool number 3 is getting the tag. We're putting the tag on the feature. Okay? So what that's going to look like, the tag is going to be, what does blank, whatever that feature is, in this case the backyard, mean to you? And you could say, what does having, so I'll throw that in up here. What does having that garage or that backyard, that feature, whatever it is, what does having that feature, so what does having that backyard? So then I'm gonna say to Jeremy, so what does having that backyard mean to you? And then he's either gonna say, well, it means that I'm, whatever. I'm hoping he's gonna say one of the 15 benefit words, which I'm gonna give you in just a minute here. But I'm hoping that what he's gonna do is he's gonna say one of these 15 words or talk around it. So he already said entertainment. So if I said, hey, so I got a great picture of this backyard. What does having that backyard mean to you?
Allows me to entertain people and be able to recreate at home.
Yeah, so now if he said that, so it allows me to entertain people and gives me the recreation, I'm going, okay, now let me pause for a minute though and say this. Features can be multi-beneficial. So just know they can be two, they could be recreation and entertainment, that's possible. But most of the time, and when I say most of the time, probably like 75% of the time, it's gonna be one thing. Now, depending on, if they talked about the entertainment and they talked about having, going out and playing with the kids, it probably is then both of those. But if they've only talked about like one feature, meaning the barbecue, it's probably not two benefits. Does that make sense?
Probably mostly just for the entertainment.
Yeah, but if you had said, hey, I got a space to go out there and play catch with my kids and a swing that I can go push them, like then, or basketball hoop, then it could be, hey, I like to entertain, but I also want to have it for my recreation. Bam, that works. So keep that in mind. But if he's only talking really about the barbecuing and he says entertaining and recreation, if recreation doesn't make sense based on the questions I've asked, probably it's not recreation, it's just entertainment. Does that make sense? Okay, good. So the other way you can use the tag is you could say is why, now's where the why comes in. Why is blank important? So typically how I do it is I'm gonna say, so Jeremy, what does having that backyard mean to you? If he doesn't say one of the benefit words or talk around one of the benefit words, then I'm gonna say, well, so, let's just say he says, oh, it'd just be great because, I like to have the people over and we spend time together and blah, blah, blah. Then I might go, okay, well, so why is that important? Is what I would then follow up with. So why why is having them over and spending time with them important? If he hasn't already said a benefit word, he should at that point. And it may be, so I'll give you another one of the benefit words. It may be that he says, well, it's just the way that I can show my family how much I care about them, and we can spend time together bonding as a family. Well, that benefit word would be love. So really, what he's looking for in a backyard is a place to show his friends or his family how much he loves them. Now, you might, especially if he was talking about having the bros over and hanging out, you might not want to be, oh, so you want to do that because you want to show your buddies how much you love them. Like with a guy, they might be like, well, I mean, I guess. Like, but you might say, hey, this is a way you can have some bro time and you're hanging out and you're showing your friends how much you care about them. And he's like, yeah, that's what it is. Then I would write down love for me. Like, I'm not going to say that probably necessarily to them, but I'm probably going to write it down. Make sense? Okay, so now that we've done that, we've landed on, and let's just say that it was entertainment that he was looking for in the backyard. Great. So I'm going to say, so one of the things we're looking for really in this backyard is a place that we're looking for a place you can entertain. And then what I'm looking for is him to have a, like, yeah, like almost like he first discovered it. Like just now I figured it out. If he gives me a yeah, then I know they're crystallized. If he goes, yeah, then it's one of two things. Either he already knew that, what it was, or that's not what it is. So
How do you know?
So part of how you're gonna know on that is you gotta pay attention to the body language when he says yes. So, and I guess Dylan, you can't see probably, but, say yes, but have it like not really, okay? So like meaning you're saying yes just to be polite, not because it is. So just kind of watch his face. So if I understand what you're talking about here, really what you're looking for in this backyard is a place to have friends and family over because you're really worried about your health.
Yeah, I guess.
So Dylan, what you didn't see, and part of why I didn't have him come stand up, because you probably wouldn't see it anyway, is what I was looking for is right here.
That's right.
When he kind of went, yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
See, if I watch and they scrunch up like that, that's their way of being like, no. But they don't want to be rude, so they'll be like, yeah,
Sounds good.
sounds good. So if that happens, that's not it. But versus if I said, so, Jeremy, it sounds like what you're looking for really is a place that you can have the family over and just, entertain.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, see, if that's what I'm looking for is, yeah, that's it. If I get a yeah. Now, here's the good news. Once they land on that, they're now no longer worried about the feature. Now, I do want to be clear, though, that sometimes actually the feature is, you're going to, like, if I go show him a place and there's nowhere to entertain, he's going to be like, well, did you not hear what I said? So here's the key thing. When I go show houses to him now, I'm going to go show houses to him and I'm not going to talk about the feature. So I'm not going to go outside and be like, does this barbecue area look good or whatever? Like, I'm not going to talk about the feature. I'm going to say, hey, does this space look like it would give you the room to entertain the way you want to? See, talk about the feature, the benefit, not the feature. So the moment they've crystallized, I stick to that. Hey, so we go out, we go look at a house. Hey, does that backyard look like it would work for you to be able to entertain? Even though he may have talked about the shed and blah, like we may or may not have to deal with that. Probably would in this case because of the garage. But let's say that he talked about but everything really was about, hey, so why is having that backyard important to you? Well, it's because then I can have my friends over and I know I got space and blah, blah, blah to entertain. Okay, so one of the things you were looking for is a place to entertain. Yep, great. Now that's all I'm going to talk about when I go to the house. Does this look like that would give you a spot to entertain? And then he's going to be like, I think it needs to be a little bigger, or he's going to be like, oh no, this would be perfect. Great, should we go write an offer? See, that's what we're doing. Okay, so now that we've done that, I'm going to land on this grid here, I'm going to label it, and I'm going to write over here, entertain, okay? So now I know that feature that he's looking for is about entertainment. So now we're going to go to the next one. So I'm going to take that next box, which is the garage, I'm going to start with a directive. So I'm gonna just say, hey, Jeremy, picture yourself in the garage, tell me what you see. Blah, 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 blah. He tells me, okay, well, how many cars do you have? And what kind of cars are they? And what other things do so you want for some storage? How much storage space do you need? What kinds of things are you storing? Who else is gonna use it? Where's it gonna be? I'm just asking all these who, what, when, where, how questions about the garage based on what he's told me about the garage. Then I'm gonna just come down to, okay, so what does having that garage mean to you? And then,
Gives me space to work on the car.
okay, so why is having space to, because that's not one of the benefit words, having space. So why is having that space important?
I like to be able to just do my own work myself. I don't wanna go take it to the mechanic if I wanna work on my car and then walk away for a bit. So
Okay,
that'd be
perfect.
convenient.
So this is another, potentially one of the words, one of the benefit words is self-actualization. Meaning, and why do you want to do it yourself rather than take it?
Just more independent on it, like working on it myself if I can.
Yeah, and see, if he said, I just am gonna feel accomplished or something for it, then I would be like, oh, it's self-actualization. Now, most people won't relate to that, meaning if I said, oh, so what you're looking for in the garage is someplace that you can self-actualize, they're gonna be like, what the hell are you talking about? So, but if I just said to him, hey, so really what you're looking for is like, if you go do it afterwards, you're feeling like, hey, like I just fixed my own car.
Yeah. makes you feel
And
good
if that's
about
what it was, then it's self-actualization. If though he said, well, I just don't wanna pay somebody else to do that, well, then that would be a different, that one is gonna be economy.
It makes you feel good about yourself, makes you feel like you're not dependent on,
Then I would say that's self-actualization, if that's what he's saying. But if he's saying of, I just don't wanna spend the money, like I figure I can do it myself, I don't wanna spend, if it's about the money, saving, so economy is about saving money, okay? If it was, hey, because I like to work on cars and then I'm gonna turn around and sell them and make money, then that would be about value. Okay, so values about making money, economy is about saving money. So if he's talking about hey, it'll save me money from taking it to the shop, or I can change the oil myself, that's great. If it's, I'm gonna feel accomplished because I did it, then it's self-actualization. If it's, I'm doing it because it's kind of a side hobby that I use to make money, well then that's value. So he's doing it, it's about making money, okay? All right, we good on how step 2 and step 3 works? Any questions? Okay. So let's go through, let me give you the rest of the benefit words so that you have all of those as well. So some of the other ones that you're gonna come across is privacy is one of the benefit words. So that's gonna be just about, hey, I want the seclusion, I wanna get away, all that would be privacy. Comfort is another one. Comfort is about a sense of ease. So think of comfort as being creature comfort. The way I like to explain it is, I used to have a little Shih Tzu, I don't anymore, but I used to have this little Shih Tzu and she would jump up on the couch, we had a blanket that was like her spot on the couch. And so she would jump up there and then she would take her nose and she'd like push the blanket and then she'd get on it and smush it down and she'd get off and move it a little bit with her paws and then she'd get back on there and then she'd lay down and then she'd stand up and she'd turn around and then all of a sudden she'd just go whoosh, and like then she was settled in. Like that's comfort. Comfort is so if somebody's like talking about having, we want to have a deck and maybe that house high on the hill with the view is about, hey, at the end of the long day, I like to go out and sit on the deck and have a drink or whatever, and I'm just, like I'm just relaxing finally. That's going to be probably comfort. So comfort, it's not comfortable, like, oh, this couch is comfortable. It's, like I can let the stress go. That's comfort, okay? Let's see. What else are we doing here? Let's see. How many do we have? That would be helpful.
10.
We're at 10?
Yep.
Okay. Next one then is safety.
that buyer says that to me, I don't know what he means.
Says what to you?
When he is looking at these townhomes,
Uh-huh.
he says, he keeps using that word safety.
And like, give me an example of how he's using it.
He needs a garage that's big enough for his Xfinity truck.
Okay,
Got it.
okay,
And we've had discussions, even though his one and only child that he's raised is leaving to go away to school.
okay.
It's almost like I don't wanna go through these emotional empty nester things with you, but he was looking at 3 and 4 bedroom places.
Okay.
And so he's going through these, I have to acknowledge I'm going to be alone. So
Okay.
get
But
it through your head, but he's using the word safety.
like, give me an example of how he's using it.
I'm looking for a place and safety's an issue. Now, he may be the first black man to move into Harriman.
He's not.
So, I
Promise.
wonder- Promise?
I promise.
So I don't know if he's saying that in relationship to that. I don't know what he means.
Well, no, that's, so see, that's what, to me, that's,
We're
this
not
is-
looking at gated communities.
right, but this is the example. Remember back here on the permission, I said you gotta ask people in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you some questions. Some of them may be things you haven't considered, may even make you a little uncomfortable. That would be why we wanna say that, because it might be uncomfortable for him to share you why he wants safety. Maybe it's like I brought up on Tuesday of like, when I was 7, my dad was shot and killed, and so like I've kind of, for me, I wanted a bedroom that was higher up. Now, we'll go to the next level of this. Sometimes people say safety, but what they really mean is security.
With like a system.
No, security is peace of mind. See, when you and I were kids, they didn't call them security systems. What'd they call them? Burglar alarms. It was a burglar alarm. Imagine somebody going out and doing summer sales that they're selling burglar alarms. Why do they call them security systems versus burglar alarms?
We never even had that.
Oh, you didn't?
Left everything open and unlocked.
Oh, all right.
I think the burglar alarm is just an alarm to sound to scare off the burglar. The security system makes you feel like there's gonna be a response, you're secure.
So that's the key, is the reason that all of the companies have switched from being like, I remember as a kid, my dad owned this pharmacy, and I remember we'd be sitting down at dinner, he would have just gotten home, we'd sit down at dinner, and then the phone would ring and pick it up, and he'd be like, oh, the burglar alarm's going off, I gotta go back out and see what's going on. And he'd get up from the table, leave, and go drive to his pharmacy and go check, and usually it was just, a bird set it off, or, something weird like that, and he would just shut it off and come back home. But they always called it a burglar alarm, and security gives you peace of mind. So that's why they changed it. So think of when somebody's looking for security, it's the peace of mind they're looking for. So that's why I feel like with your guy, it probably isn't, safety is about physical safety. So like, for example, it'd be, I wanna have a fenced in backyard so that my kids don't run in the street. Okay, well, that would be about safety. But really, what is it that's safety for the kids, but what is it for the mom?
Security.
Security, it's peace of mind. I get peace of mind. See, to some extent, I feel like these really go together. In fact, I've been debating on changing this to saying there's 14 key things and lumping these two together, safety and
I'm gonna
security.
ask him what he means.
Yeah, I would, and say, well, tell me what you mean by safety. Yeah, just say, share with me or help me understand.
Help me understand.
Yeah, you don't like share with me. Help me understand when you say safety, what are you referring to? And then he'll start to talk and you
Let's
say,
talk
okay,
about that.
yeah. Okay, next, after this is gonna be prestige or esteem. So this is where I'm saying, I'm kind of thinking, I put those together as one, prestige and esteem. Think of it as heads and tails of a coin. And I'm probably after today, I'm gonna lump these and say there's 14, and safety and security are together like this. Because generally, when people say safety, they really just mean they want the peace of mind.
Well, that's a good way to put it. Safety for the child means security for the mom.
That's right.
That big fenced-in backyard safety for the child means mom can turn her back and do her ironing.
Perfect.
It's two
So
different things.
prestige and esteem. So prestige is how I see myself. Esteem no, sorry, I said that backwards. Esteem is how I see myself. Prestige is how others see me. So if they're talking about this big house and you're saying like, so what does having that mean to you? And they say, well, it means when I drive up to the house, I can know like I've made it. Like this is why this is what I worked my whole life for. Well, that's esteem. If they said, well, I like to have parties and have people come over, and when they show up, I want to be like, wow, I can't believe you live here. Well, then that's prestige. So it's about the prestige. Make sense? Okay, next one is aesthetics. So the aesthetics is gonna be just the look. So whenever that's come up, it's been because the person was like, I want one of those houses that has, old, that's in the avenues, and it's got the doorknobs, that's got etching, like if somebody starts talking about etching on a doorknob, it's about the aesthetics. Like, and usually when I've seen that, they're describing the brick in detail. It's about the way that it looks is what it's important. What number are we on?
The last one.
Okay, last one, sex. Save the best for last. I'm just kidding. But, so that one, now again, this may not be one that remember in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, may need to ask you some questions, make you feel uncomfortable. If somebody starts talking about sex in their house, it might make me uncomfortable. So that's probably what I should say. That's how I should say it, is I may have to ask you some questions that might make you or me uncomfortable. But just know, like, you can say you don't have to say the word sex. And I'll give you a quick story on that, but you could say romance,
About that.
intimate, what?
Why would you be talking about that?
Well, so I'll give you an example. Here's why. So we had one, so it used to be, years ago when I trained this, I trained it and part of the training program was you had to actually meet with a client, a real potential client, and sit down and take them through this whole process with me watching. Like for me to certify you in this process, you had to do it and I watched. So this guy that was in our office that we had up at Park City at the time came down, and the building I was in was just kitty corner, on the other side of the Union Park here. So he brings the guy in from Park City, the guy lived in Park City, brought him in and he's, hey, describe for me your ideal home, and he talks about the hot tub being important and who's gonna use it. Well, my wife and I, how often and when, and blah, blah, blah. And at night, and it's time for us to just spend time together and blah, blah. And so then the agent says, so what does having the hot tub mean to you? And the guy's like, oh, it just means that, my wife and I have that quiet time together. And the agent's now wanting to land on one of these 15 benefit words, and he goes, so if I understand you correctly, what you're wanting this hot tub for is a place for you and your wife to have some great sex. And the guy goes, well, yes, but I wasn't gonna say that. So so just know, that might be the reason that they're wanting it. Now, I did have one other time and this one was with a female, so this is why I say might make me uncomfortable. I never said that as part of permission, by the way. I would always say might make you uncomfortable. But this female was talking about the master bedroom. And I was like, so, what furniture, I can't remember if I said furniture, what's the layout gonna be or something? And she was like, well, it's gonna have this here and that there, and then it'll have the handlebars on the wall over here. And I was like,
Swing in the corner.
yeah, and I was like, handlebars? And so anyway, I knew immediately that one was about. So just know, you don't have to say that, but know that hey, so what you're looking for is a place that you can have some romance, some intimate time together, yeah. However you want to say it like that. All right. Any questions on any of those? Who knew you were going to be coming to class today and talking about sex? Huh?
Oh man, Russ.
Okay, so now here's the last piece of this is once we have gone through all that, we've landed on the benefits. So again, with the garage here, I would then have just been like, okay, the garage is really about self-actualization. So I would just label that. Then if there was a third one, I'd say, okay, let's talk now about this. So picture yourself standing in the backyard in the family room, tell me what you see. Who's gonna use it? What do you do? How often? What kinds of things? What's the furniture? The other thing, keep in mind on this, You could ask what kind of flooring, what color are the walls, what type of lighting, all of that kind of stuff. The other thing you're gonna ask under these who, what, when, where, how questions, let's say that somebody says to you, I wanna have really big windows. Well, what does that mean? Really big windows. My idea of really big windows might be different than your idea of big windows. So I need to find out from them, hey, you mentioned big windows, tell me what a big window is for you.
Yeah.
Cause
Want an
they,
8x8 window, or do you want floor to ceiling?
yeah, and so the example I have of this, and if they say, well, I don't know how to really explain it, then let me give you an example that I did. This was a real life one. Sitting down with this couple, and I say, describe for me your ideal home, blah, blah, blah. One of the things she said about the kitchen, which was her number one, her kitchen, she said, it needs to be a really big kitchen. Okay, so when I get to modifiers, I said, okay, so what's a really big kitchen? And she goes, well, I don't really know how to describe it. Like, I don't know dimensions. I don't think I could give you dimensions. And I said, that's fine. So what I will usually use is, like, basically just in relation to this room. Now, we were in a conference room, and what happened, and it was a pretty big conference room, is I assumed, like if I said to you guys, what's a big kitchen? You might look at this room and be like, yeah, this is a big kitchen. This would be a big kitchen. This is what I want. But she did this. We were in a conference room that was a decent sized conference room, but she said basically, if I could get a kitchen like that, which, Dylan can't see me. Basically just, maybe 8x10 or something, like,
Yeah.
8 by
or
10.
let's say 10x10, I don't know. I mean, she didn't give me dimensions, but she was just like, if I could get one that was like that big, and in my mind, I'm like, that is not a big kitchen.
It's a broom closet.
But to her, it was, and I said, and here's what happened, is I said, how big's the kitchen? And she said, well, I don't know dimensions. Well, in relation to this room, and she's like, oh, probably about like that. And then she immediately said to me, well, the one we're in right now, if I'm cooking and my husband's doing the dishes, like, you can't both fit. Like where the stove is and where the sink is, like they're so close. You're either cooking or you're doing dishes. You can't do both. She said, so for me, a big kitchen is some place that I could cook and he could do dishes at the same time, and we're not bumping into each other all the time. See, that's anytime somebody says big or a lot, I need a lot of windows. Okay, well, what's a lot? Like, to me, this is a lot of windows. To them, a lot might mean 2. So you gotta find out, anytime they're using some type of an adjective, like, okay, so for you, because otherwise you will assume for you, oh, well, they need a house that has a bank of windows like this. Well, that might not be what they're thinking. And so that's where, again, we are gonna ask, so when you mentioned a ton of windows, how many is a ton? How big are the windows? All of those things is what we're asking here. Make sense? Okay, so now that I've landed on all of these, then the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna say to them, let me tell you how I work. And then ultimately now is when I'm gonna ask them to sign, if it's a buyer, the buyer broker. So let me tell you how I work. And then what I like to say is in my experience, I'm gonna have to look at 10 houses to find one that will work for you. So what that means is if we're gonna go look at 3 or 4 houses, I will have previewed 30 to 40. I'm willing to do that, provided that during the time we're working together, you'll work exclusively with me. Okay? And then they'll say, okay, great. And then I'm gonna have them sign the buyer broker. Make sense? Okay, so that's the process. What questions?
That's a lot.
It is. Okay. So, I'll give you these, and then Dylan, when you're here next, grab me and I'll get you one of these. All right, any other questions? Thoughts, comments? Is this valuable, helpful?
It's very
Or not?
valuable to me right now.
Okay, well, so here's so the biggest thing is just start doing it, practice, get with somebody to practice. The other thing that I will say on this is, or not on this, but the last thing that I'm gonna just, so Tuesday's class is gonna be working your sphere of influence is what we're gonna talk about. And like on this class, I told you, if you don't remember anything, remember the purpose of this is to cause crystallization, like that's kind of the biggest thing. of everything I'm gonna teach you guys, working your sphere of influence will be the most, like that one is gonna make you the most money if you'll do what I teach on Tuesday, so make sure you're here if you can be. Anyway, gonna be good information.
On Tuesday,
On Tuesday at 11, so. Okay,
11:30?
11, not 11:30. Okay, thanks for being here.
Thank
Be
you.
there. Thanks, Russ.
Okay, see ya. Alright.
Alright, I may or may not see you tomorrow. I might go
Okay.
into the Layton office and start
Oh.
trying to meet some people up there.
Cool, that's a good idea. Although Friday might not be the best day to do that, but.
Yeah, probably. Don't want people in there.
Yeah, who knows, I mean, I don't know for sure.
Have a good
Okay, see ya.